Her ex left her homeless and pregnant. The Mafia boss decided she's moving into his penthouse. Rain lashed against the windows of the black SUV as Lorenzo Russo stared at the soaked, trembling woman before him. 6 months pregnant, clutching a single suitcase, with mascara-stained tears mixing with raindrops on her pale face. "Who did this to you?" His voice was dangerously soft, barely audible above the storm. Isabel placed a protective hand over her swollen belly. "My boyfriend Marcus. He cleaned out our accounts and disappeared last week. When I got home tonight, they'd changed the locks." Lorenzo's dark eyes hardened. "Where is he now?" "I don't know. I don't care. I just need somewhere to stay tonight." Lorenzo reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face with unexpected gentleness. "I've seen how men like him operate. They isolate, they control, they destroy. Tell me, Isabel, when was the last time you made a decision that was truly yours?" She looked up, stunned by the question. I can't remember." "Then let this be the first." He extended his hand. "My penthouse has 4 bedrooms. Stay as long as you need. No conditions, no expectations. Why would you help me? We barely know each other." His expression softened, revealing a glimpse of something vulnerable beneath the dangerous exterior. "Because once, my mother was exactly where you are now, pregnant, alone, with nowhere to turn. The difference is, someone helped her." He paused, his gaze intense. "Without that intervention, I wouldn't exist." Thunder cracked overhead as Isabel made the choice that would change everything. 3 hours earlier, Isabel Moretti had trudged up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment, her feet swollen and back aching from a double shift at Gino's diner. The November wind had picked up, carrying the promise of a heavy storm, and all she wanted was a hot shower in her bed, no matter how thin the mattress or how drafty the apartment had become with winter approaching. What she found instead was an eviction notice taped to her door and new locks that her key couldn't open. Through the window, she could see the apartment was empty, stripped of furniture, pictures, even the second-hand crib she'd been preparing for the baby. The building manager appeared from his ground floor unit, arms crossed defensively. "Your boyfriend cleaned out last week. Said to tell you it's over if you came looking." His eyes flicked to her pregnant belly without sympathy. 4 months behind on rent. Your stuff's in the dumpster out back, what he didn't take. There must be some mistake, Isabel said, her voice hollow even to her own ears. I gave Marcus my tips for the rent every week. The manager shrugged. Not my problem, lady. You got 30 minutes to get whatever you want from the trash before the truck comes. In the alley behind the building, Isabel found her life scattered among coffee grounds and takeout containers. The dumpster had been picked through already, anything of value was long gone. Her clothes were soaked from a broken pipe overhead, her books swollen with moisture. She managed to salvage a few photos, some toiletries, and enough clothes to fill a single suitcase she found with a broken wheel. The first fat droplets of rain began to fall as reality sank in. Marcus was gone. The rent money, her money, had never been paid. 6 months pregnant, she was now homeless, with less than $200 to her name. Her first call was to the women's shelter, only to learn they were at capacity with a 2-week waiting list. The second was to her parents, a call she dreaded making since they'd cut contact when she refused to terminate her pregnancy. You made your choice, Isabel, her mother said, voice tight with disappointment. We told you what would happen if you kept that child. Mom, please. I just need a place to stay for a few nights until Your father and I are leaving for our cruise tomorrow. The house is being watched by the security company. Don't embarrass yourself by showing up. The line went dead. Isabel stood in the gathering storm, scrolling through a contact list that had grown shorter over the 2 years she'd been with Marcus. He had a talent for finding fault with her friends, for creating scenes that made socializing more trouble than it seemed worth. Isolating her so gradually she hadn't recognized it happening until it was complete. By the time she reached a small bakery with an awning that offered minimal shelter, her jacket was soaked through and her teeth were chattering. She set her suitcase down and leaned against the wall, trying to think through her options as her baby kicked restlessly inside her. That's when she saw his name in her contacts. Lorenzo Russo. The quiet, intense man who had been a regular at the diner until about 6 months ago. The man who left $100 tips and spoke to her with a respect she'd almost forgotten existed. The man who'd given her his personal number after stepping between her and a drunk customer who wouldn't take no for an answer. "If you ever need anything," he'd said simply. The rumors about Lorenzo had circulated among the staff in hushed whispers. Business owner, they said. Connected, they implied. Dangerous, they warned. But he'd never been anything but polite to her, his dark eyes watching with an intensity that made her both nervous and oddly safe. With trembling fingers, she pressed the call button. Russo speaking. His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, confident, broking no nonsense. Lorenzo? This is Isabel, from Gino's Diner. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to call. There was a pause, then, Isabel. What's wrong? Something in his tone, concern without pity, broke through her last reserves of composure. Everything, she admitted, tears finally spilling. I'm pregnant, my boyfriend cleaned out our accounts before disappearing, I've been evicted, and I'm standing in the rain with nowhere to go. Another pause, shorter this time. Where are you exactly? She described the intersection, the little bakery closed for the night. Stay there. 15 minutes. The line went dead. 14 minutes later, the black SUV pulled to the curb, and Lorenzo emerged, taller and more imposing than she remembered in his tailored overcoat. His expression, as he took in her drenched form and the protective way she cradled her belly, shifted from neutral to something dangerous. Now, seated in the back of Lorenzo's vehicle, Isabel clutched her suitcase on her lap like a shield. The warmth of the car made her realize just how cold she'd become, and she couldn't stop shivering. The Penthouse, Antonio, Lorenzo directed to his driver, a broad-shouldered man whose eyes never left the road. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment, taking in her drenched clothes and the protective way she cradled her belly. I don't expect charity, Isabel said quickly, pride surfacing despite her desperate circumstances. I can work. I just need a little help getting back on my feet. When was the last time you ate? He asked, ignoring her statement. The question caught her off guard. Lunch break. Around noon. Lorenzo nodded once, then pressed a button on the console between them. Lucia, have dinner for 2 prepared. And run a bath in the guest suite. To Isabel, he added, my housekeeper. She'll help you get settled. Lorenzo, I can't just move into your home. I barely know you. Isabel's voice trembled slightly. Something softened in his expression. You know me better than you think, Isabel. And I know enough about you to understand you wouldn't call unless you had no other option. He glanced at her stomach. The father. Marcus. He's not in the picture? He left last week. No warning, no note. Just emptied our accounts and disappeared. She swallowed hard. I thought it was temporary, that he was just on another gambling binge. Then I came home tonight and... Her voice trailed off. And you found yourself alone, carrying his child, with nowhere to go. Lorenzo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Some men deserve to be fed to the fishes. The casual way he referenced violence should have frightened her. Instead, she felt a strange calm settling over her. I don't want revenge. I just want stability for my baby. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. The penthouse has 4 bedrooms. You'll have your own suite, complete privacy. Stay until you figure out your next steps. No conditions, no expectations. Why would you do this for me? We're practically strangers. Isabel asked, her eyes searching his face for ulterior motives. Perhaps I believe in balancing scales, he replied cryptically. Or perhaps I remember what it means to have nowhere to turn. His gaze drifted to the passing cityscape. My mother was 7 months pregnant with me when my father was killed. She had no family, no resources. Someone helped her when she had nothing. Without that intervention, I wouldn't exist. The SUV turned into an underground garage beneath one of the city's most exclusive high-rises. As the vehicle stopped, Lorenzo looked at her directly. The choice is yours, Isabel. A safe place to stay, no strings attached. Or I can take you wherever you'd prefer to go. Isabel placed both hands on her belly, feeling the gentle movement within. For the first time in months, she had options, limited, complicated options, but choices nonetheless. I'd like to stay, she said finally. Just until I figure things out. Lorenzo nodded once, seemingly satisfied. Welcome home, then. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, Isabel too overwhelmed to speak and Lorenzo respectful of her emotional state. When the doors opened directly into his home, she couldn't contain a small gasp of surprise. Home was the understatement of the century. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the rain-slicked city below. Modern yet warm, with rich woods and comfortable furnishings that somehow balanced luxury with livability. The space spoke of wealth, but not ostentation, power worn with quiet confidence, much like the man himself. Lucia, the housekeeper, was a motherly Italian woman who clucked sympathetically at Isabel's bedraggled state. Poor thing, soaked to the bone. The bath is ready, and I'll bring you something comfortable to wear. Thank you, Isabel managed, still struggling to process the rapid change in her circumstances. Lucia led her down a hallway to the guest suite, a space larger than her entire former apartment, with a bathroom featuring a deep soaking tub already filled with steaming water and a subtle floral scent. For a moment, Isabel simply stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the contrast between where she'd been an hour ago and where she found herself now. Take your time, Lucia encouraged gently. Dinner will be ready whenever you are. Senior Russo, he is a patient man. Alone in the luxurious bathroom, Isabel finally allowed herself to fully process the day's events. The betrayal, the eviction, the desperation, and now this unexpected sanctuary. Tears came again, but different this time, tears of relief, of release. She eased herself into the warm bath, one hand on her rounded belly. We're going to be okay, she whispered to her unborn child, allowing herself to believe it for the first time since seeing the positive pregnancy test 6 months ago. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. 40 minutes later, clean, warm, and dressed in soft lounge clothes that somehow accommodated her pregnant form perfectly, Isabel found herself seated at a dining table across from Lorenzo as Lucia served a simple but exquisite meal of pasta, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread. These clothes. Isabel began, uncertain how to phrase the question. Lucia has a daughter about your size who recently had a baby, Lorenzo explained. She keeps some things here for when they visit. We can get you whatever else you need tomorrow. The casual offer of further assistance made her uncomfortable. I can't accept all this. I'll find a job, pay you back. Isabel. Lorenzo's interruption was gentle but firm. Right now, your priority should be taking care of yourself and your child. The rest can wait. I've never been dependent on anyone, she insisted, years of fierce self-reliance rebelling against her circumstances. Independence is admirable. Stubbornness in the face of reality is foolish. He served her another portion of pasta without asking. Eat. We'll discuss logistics tomorrow. Something in his tone brooked no argument, yet lacked the controlling edge she'd grown accustomed to with Marcus. This wasn't manipulation or domination, it was simply a man accustomed to solving problems, addressing a situation with straightforward efficiency. After dinner, Lorenzo showed her around the penthouse, pointing out the kitchen, library, and home gym she was welcome to use. The balcony wraps around 3 sides, he explained, leading her through sliding glass doors to the covered outdoor space, protected from the rain but offering an unobstructed view of the city lights. Morning sun is best on the east side. It's beautiful, Isabel said honestly. I've lived in this city my whole life and never seen it like this. Most don't, Lorenzo replied. There's safety in elevation. Distance provides perspective. The statement seemed to carry meaning beyond the literal, but before she could probe further, a wave of exhaustion hit her. She tried to stifle a yawn, but Lorenzo caught it. You need rest, he said, not unkindly. We can continue tomorrow. Back in the guest suite, lying in the most comfortable bed she'd ever experienced, Isabel tried to make sense of her situation. How had she ended up here, in the home of a man whose reputation inspired fear, yet whose actions toward her showed nothing but respect? Was this a momentary reprieve, or the beginning of something unexpected? The questions circled in her mind until fatigue finally pulled her into deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to sunlight streaming through partially opened curtains and the scent of coffee and baking bread. For a moment, she was disoriented, the luxurious surroundings unfamiliar. Then yesterday's events crashed back, and she sat up slowly, one hand automatically moving to her belly. The baby kicked in response, strong and reassuring. A soft knock at the door preceded Lucia's cheerful, "Buongiorno." "May I come in?" "Yes, please," Isabel called, quickly running fingers through her tangled hair. Lucia entered carrying a tray with coffee, juice, and fresh pastries. "Signor Russo said to let you sleep, but it's nearly 10, and the bambino needs nourishment." She set the tray on a side table. "How did you sleep, Cara?" "Better than I have in months," Isabel admitted. "Thank you for everything, Lucia. I don't know what I would have done if—" "Shoo," the older woman interrupted gently. "No dwelling on what might have been. Today is what matters." She moved efficiently around the room, opening curtains fully and laying out fresh towels. "Signor Russo had to attend to business this morning, but he left these for you." She placed a smartphone and a credit card on the nightstand. "He said the phone has his number and mine programmed in, and the card is for anything you need." Isabel stared at the items, torn between gratitude and discomfort. "I can't accept these. It's too much." Lucia's expression softened. "Signor Russo is a man who believes in taking care of his own. For whatever reason, he has decided you fall under his protection. This is not charity, Cara. This is respect." "But why me?" Isabel asked, voicing the question that had kept returning since last night. Why would he care what happens to a waitress he barely knows? Lucia considered this, her head tilted thoughtfully. "In the 5 years I have worked for him, I have never seen Signor Russo bring someone to his home this way. He is a private man, careful about his space." She smiled mysteriously. "Perhaps he saw something in you that reminded him of what matters." After breakfast, Isabel explored the penthouse more thoroughly. The library caught her attention, walls lined with books ranging from classical literature to modern business, comfortable seating arranged to take advantage of both the view and the natural light. She ran her fingers along leather-bound spines, pausing at a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. When she pulled it from the shelf, a black and white photo slipped from between its pages. The image showed a strikingly beautiful woman holding a baby, her expression a mixture of pride and wariness. Something about her stance suggested protective fierceness, a mother ready to defend her child against any threat. Isabel carefully returned the photo to its place and reshelved the book, feeling she had glimpsed something deeply personal. Late afternoon found her on the east balcony, wrapped in a soft throw against the November chill, watching clouds skate across the sky. The door slid open behind her, and Lorenzo stepped out, his suit as impeccable as always but his expression tired. "Lucia tells me you've been resting," he said, joining her at the railing. "As much as this little one allows," Isabel replied with a small smile, gesturing to her belly. "Thank you for the phone and, well, everything. But I can't accept the credit card, Lorenzo. It's too much." He studied her for a moment. "Your pride is admirable, but impractical under the circumstances. It's not just pride. It's..." She hesitated, searching for words. "I need to maintain some independence, some control over my life. The last 2 years with Marcus, I lost pieces of myself so gradually I didn't notice until there was almost nothing left. I can't make that mistake again." Understanding dawned in Lorenzo's eyes. "You believe accepting help means surrendering autonomy, doesn't it?" She turned to face him directly. "Not necessarily. Consider it a loan, if that's easier. Or consider that allowing others to assist when you're vulnerable isn't weakness, it's recognizing your own value enough to know you deserve support." His words struck an unexpected chord. How long had it been since she'd felt truly valued? Since before Marcus, certainly. Before her parents' conditional love became evident. Maybe not since her grandmother had been alive. "I saw the photo," she said suddenly. "In the book." "Your mother?" Surprise flickered across Lorenzo's features before he composed himself. "Yes. And me, at about 2 months old. She looks like she would take on the world to protect you." "She did," he confirmed, something fierce and tender in his voice. "After my father was killed, she rebuilt her life from nothing. Learned English, got a job, eventually started a small business. She never remarried, never complained about the hand she was dealt. She just persevered." "Is she still?" Isabel left the question hanging. "She passed 5 years ago. Cancer." He turned to look out at the city. "But she lived to see me succeed, to know I was established enough that no one could ever put us on the street again." Isabel sensed there was much more to the story, dark chapters he wasn't sharing. But the parallels to her own situation weren't lost on her. A single mother, facing an uncertain future, determined to provide for her child. "I'd like to work," she said after a moment. "Not immediately, but soon. After the baby comes. I have experience in food service, customer care. I'm a quick learner." Lorenzo nodded. "My legitimate businesses include restaurants, real estate, and an art gallery. You could find a place in any of them, when you're ready." "Legitimate businesses," she repeated, the unspoken question hanging in the air between them. "You must have questions about what I do," he acknowledged, turning to face her directly. "I've heard things." "At the diner." She met his gaze steadily. "Most of what you've heard is probably true," he said without elaboration. "Does that concern you?" She considered this carefully. "I'm more concerned with who you are than what you do." A flicker of surprise crossed his usually composed features. An interesting distinction. I've known plenty of men with legal jobs who were monsters behind closed doors, she said quietly, memories of Marcus's escalating emotional cruelty surfacing. The law doesn't determine character. No, Lorenzo agreed, it doesn't. He leaned against the railing. My family operates outside conventional boundaries, Isabel. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. But we have our own code, our own ethics. I've never harmed someone who didn't deserve it. And who decides who deserves it? She raised an eyebrow, challenging him. I do. The simple statement carried the weight of absolute certainty. But you don't need to concern yourself with that aspect of my life. It will never touch you or your child. The promise hung between them, both reassurance and reminder of the power he wielded in the city's darker corners. Why did you stop coming to the diner? She asked, changing the subject. Lorenzo's expression shifted subtly. I saw him grab you once. Your boyfriend. Outside in the parking lot after your shift. The way he spoke to you. His jaw tightened. I realized my presence there was complicating your life. Men like that become more dangerous when they feel threatened. The revelation stunned her. You were trying to protect me? I was respecting your choice, he corrected. Even if I disagreed with it. If you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to Serafina's Stories for more compelling narratives with meaningful life lessons. Your support helps us create content that inspires and entertains. Isabel absorbed this, remembering how Marcus's controlling behavior had indeed intensified around that time, his accusations about her flirting with customers becoming more frequent. Had he sensed Lorenzo's interest? Had she? I should have left him sooner, she admitted. I knew what he was. But when I found out about the baby... She placed a protective hand over her belly. I wanted to believe he could change, that we could be a family. Hope can be both our greatest strength and our greatest vulnerability. Lorenzo's voice held an unexpected gentleness. You wanted something better for your child than you had. There's no shame in that. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock at the penthouse door, followed by Antonio entering with unusual urgency. Boss, we found him, the driver announced, barely acknowledging Isabel's presence. He's at the Golden Wheel Casino, down 20 grand and trying to borrow more. Lorenzo straightened, his posture shifting subtly from relaxed to alert. Good. Keep him there. A cold understanding washed over Isabel. Marcus. You've been looking for him. Yes. No denial, no justification. Why? Her voice wavered slightly. Lorenzo straightened his cuffs, a deceptively casual gesture at odds with the sudden intensity in his eyes. Because he stole from you. Because he abandoned his unborn child. Because men should face consequences for their actions. Fear and something else, something she wasn't ready to examine, twisted in Isabel's chest. What are you going to do to him? What do you want me to do? He countered, surprising her. He's the father of your child. That gives you a say. The responsibility of this unexpected power dizzied her. I don't want him hurt. Even after everything he's done? Lorenzo's tone was genuinely curious, not judgmental. Violence won't help my baby, she said firmly. But the money he stole, that would. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Antonio, tell Romano I want a conversation with Mr. Johnson. Persuasive but not permanent. After Antonio departed, Isabel's legs suddenly felt weak. She sank back onto a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the reality of her situation, finding shelter with a man who commanded this kind of power, who could locate someone across a city of millions with a single order. "You're frightened now," Lorenzo observed, remaining standing. "Perhaps you're reconsidering your living arrangements." "I'm not frightened of you," she clarified, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I'm frightened by how easily you could destroy him. By how part of me wanted you to." Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression, approval, perhaps, or deeper understanding. "Darkness exists in all of us, Isabel. The difference is in how we channel it." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I'll return later tonight. Whatever is recovered from him is yours, to use however you choose. If you decide you'd prefer different accommodations after this, I'll respect that decision." After he left, Isabel sat motionless, one hand resting on her belly where her child kicked restlessly, as if sensing her turmoil. The penthouse, so comfortable hours before, suddenly felt expansive and empty, highlighting her isolation and the unconventional sanctuary she'd found. She moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the glittering city spread below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was facing consequences orchestrated by a man who had offered her protection without demand, safety without conditions. A man whose business inspired fear throughout the city, yet who remembered what it meant to have nowhere to turn. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if offering an opinion. Isabel smiled faintly, making a decision. "You're right, little one. Sometimes the safest harbor is the one no one else would dare approach." Hours passed. Night fell completely, the city transforming into a constellation of lights below her. Isabel had found a book to read, but couldn't focus on the words. She tried to rest, but her mind was too active. Instead, she found herself pacing, occasionally stopping to touch the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, reminders that she was in a world completely different from the one she'd known yesterday. The penthouse door opened at exactly 11:42 p.m. Lorenzo entered alone, removing his coat with fluid grace. His expression revealed nothing as he crossed to where she stood. "It's done," he said simply. "He's okay?" Isabel asked, needing the confirmation. "Physically, yes. His ego, perhaps less so." A ghost of a smile touched Lorenzo's lips. "He agreed to return what he took." "Just like that?" Skepticism colored her tone. "I can be quite persuasive." Lorenzo moved to a sideboard and poured himself a small measure of amber liquid. "He'll transfer the funds tomorrow morning. To a new account, in your name only." "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate, but she didn't know what else to say. Lorenzo took a sip of his drink, watching her over the rim of the glass. "Have you made your decision? About staying?" Isabel took a deep breath. "Yes. I'd like to stay. Not temporarily. Not until I figure things out. I want to build something stable, something sustainable for my child. I can contribute, work for you in some capacity that fits your organization." Lorenzo's expression remained carefully neutral. "You don't need to work for me to stay here, Isabel." "Yes, I do." Her voice strengthened with conviction. "I won't be a charity case or a responsibility. I need purpose, contribution." "On legitimate terms," she added firmly. "You have principles," he noted, approval warming his tone. "I respect that." He considered for a moment. "My legitimate businesses include restaurants, real estate, and an art gallery. You could find a place in any of them, on your own merit." "After the baby comes," she agreed. "Until then, I can help Lucia learn the household systems. Make myself useful." Lorenzo moved closer, stopping at a respectful distance. Why this choice, Isabel? Most people would run from my world, not step further into it. Because you gave me a choice when I had none. Because you respect my decisions even when you disagree with them. She met his gaze directly. And because I've learned that sometimes the most dangerous place can be the safest, if you're with the right person. Something profound passed between them in that moment, not romance, not yet, but the foundation for a connection built on understanding and respect. Two wounded souls recognizing something vital in each other. Welcome home, Isabel, Lorenzo said again, but this time the words carried the weight of promise rather than temporary shelter. For as long as you choose to stay. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Isabel slept better than she had in months in the luxurious guest suite. During the day, while Lorenzo attended to his business concerns, she helped Lucia with household tasks, despite the older woman's protests. In the evenings, they often shared dinner, their conversations growing deeper, more personal with each passing day. Isabel's pregnancy progressed without complications, her body responding to the stress-free environment, good nutrition, and regular prenatal care, arranged by Lorenzo with the city's top obstetrician who made house calls to the Penthouse. One evening, a month after her arrival, Isabel was organizing the kitchen pantry, a project she'd undertaken to Lucia's initial horror and eventual resigned acceptance, when Lorenzo returned home earlier than usual. There's someone I'd like you to meet, he said without preamble. Isabel turned, surprised. In all the weeks she'd been there, Lorenzo had never brought anyone to the Penthouse. His business associates were met elsewhere, his family connections remained mysterious. Who? She asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. My mother's sister. My Aunt Sophia. He seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. She's the woman who helped my mother when she was pregnant with me. The one I told you about. Oh. Isabel understood immediately the significance of this introduction. When? She's downstairs now. I wanted to check with you first. The consideration touched her. It was so typical of Lorenzo, this careful respect for her boundaries, even in his own home. Of course I'd like to meet her. 10 minutes later, after quickly changing from her work clothes into a simple but elegant maternity dress Lorenzo had insisted on buying her, Isabel found herself facing a striking older woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and silver-streaked black hair. Sophia Russo didn't offer a handshake or a kiss on the cheek. Instead, she studied Isabel with frank assessment, then nodded once. You've chosen well, Lorenzo, she said, her accent more pronounced than his. She has spine. I told you, Aunt Sophia, it's not like that, Lorenzo replied, a hint of exasperation suggesting this was a continuation of an earlier conversation. Not yet, the older woman corrected with a knowing smile. To Isabel, she said, my nephew thinks he's being noble. Helping you without expectations. But I see the way he looks at you when he thinks no one notices. Aunt Sophia. Lorenzo's tone held warning. Isabel felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her composure. Your nephew has been nothing but respectful and generous. I'm grateful for his help. Gratitude is a beginning, not an end, Sophia replied cryptically. Now, show me where I'll be staying. Staying? Lorenzo and Isabel spoke simultaneously. Sophia smiled, the expression transforming her severe features into something almost mischievous. Of course. You think I'd leave a pregnant woman alone with a man who knows nothing about babies? I'm moving in until after the birth. The East Suite, I presume, is still available? Lorenzo appeared momentarily speechless, a first in Isabel's experience. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. As always, Aunt Sophia, you leave me no room to argue. A skill you might learn someday, the older woman retorted, but her eyes were warm with affection. "Now, Isabel, tell me about your pregnancy while Lorenzo brings up my bags." That night marked another shift in the household dynamic. Sophia brought with her an energy that somehow made the penthouse feel more like a home. She took charge of Isabel's prenatal care with the authority of someone who had delivered more babies than she could count. She argued with Lorenzo in rapid Italian that Isabel couldn't follow but enjoyed watching. And she taught Isabel family recipes, insisting that the baby needs to taste his heritage before he's born. "How do you know it's a boy?" Isabel asked one day as they prepared pasta dough from scratch. "The way you carry. Low and forward." Sophia sprinkled flour with practiced precision. Russo men always announce their presence early. They're not known for subtlety. Isabel laughed, glancing toward Lorenzo's office where he was on a business call. "That much I've gathered." Sophia's expression grew more serious. "He told you about his mother? About how they struggled?" "A little. I know she was pregnant when his father was killed. That someone helped her, you." Sophia punched down the dough with more force than necessary. "My sister Maria was too proud to ask for help. Like someone else I know." She gave Isabel a pointed look. "By the time I found out her situation, she was living in a room not fit for animals, working 2 jobs, 7 months pregnant." "What happened to Lorenzo's father?" Isabel asked, the question she hadn't dared ask him directly. "Shot. A business disagreement." Sophia's tone made it clear what kind of business she meant. "Vincenzo was careless, too trusting. Maria paid the price." She glanced toward the office again, lowering her voice. Lorenzo was 5 when he started asking questions about his father. By 12, he knew everything. By 15, he'd found the men responsible. Isabel's hands stilled on the pasta dough. "What did he do? What Russos do?" Sophia's expression was unreadable. "He protected his family. And then he built an empire no one would dare threaten again." The revelation settled over Isabel like a weighted blanket, heavy but somehow comforting in its solidity. She had known, of course, the general contours of Lorenzo's world. But this glimpse into the specific wounds that had shaped him, the choices made by a boy too young to shoulder such burdens, illuminated him in ways mere speculation couldn't. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you need to understand the man who has opened his home to you. Who looks at your child, another man's child, and sees only something to protect." Sophia placed a work-roughened hand over Isabel's. "And because my nephew, for all his power and intelligence, is still that 15-year-old boy in some ways. Determined to protect, unable to ask for what he needs." "What does he need?" Isabel whispered. Sophia smiled, something ancient and knowing in her eyes. "The same thing we all need, Kara. A home that's more than walls and a roof. A family that's chosen, not just born into." She returned to kneading the dough. "Now, pay attention. The secret is in how long you work the pasta. Too little, it falls apart. Too much, it becomes tough. Like many things in life, no?" The weeks passed. December brought holiday decorations, tasteful lights along the penthouse terrace, a small tree that Sophia insisted upon. Isabel's pregnancy entered its final months, her body growing heavier, her movements more deliberate. Lorenzo, always attentive, became almost hovering in his concern, appearing at her side the moment she winced, ensuring her favorite foods were always available, personally vetting the doula Sophia recommended for the birth. One night, unable to find a comfortable position for sleep, Isabel wandered out to the living room and found Lorenzo still awake, working on his laptop. He looked up immediately, setting the computer aside. The baby's restless tonight, she explained, easing herself onto the sofa across from him. Seems to think my ribs are a jungle gym. May I? He asked, gesturing to the space beside her. When she nodded, he sat next to her, maintaining a careful distance. Sophia says it's good to talk to them. That they recognize voices even before birth. She's full of wisdom, your aunt. Isabel smiled, then winced as the baby delivered a particularly enthusiastic kick. Without thinking, she reached for Lorenzo's hand and placed it on the spot. His expression transformed as he felt the movement, wonder and something deeper, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen from him. He's strong, Lorenzo said softly, his hand warm through the thin fabric of her nightgown. Like his mother, Sophia's voice came from the hallway. The older woman stood in her robe, a knowing smile on her face. Can't sleep, Kara? Your grandnephew is practicing gymnastics, Isabel replied, embarrassed to be caught in what felt like an intimate moment, though nothing inappropriate had occurred. Tea will help. The blend I gave you. Sophia made no move to join them. Lorenzo, make sure she drinks it all. I'm going back to bed. These old bones need their rest. She disappeared down the hallway, but not before giving her nephew a look loaded with meaning. Alone again, Lorenzo reluctantly withdrew his hand. I'll make the tea. No, stay. Isabel caught his wrist. The baby, he calmed when you touched him. First time he's been still in hours. Lorenzo hesitated, then carefully placed his hand back on her rounded belly. Sure enough, the frantic movement had subsided to occasional gentle rolls. He recognizes you, Isabel said softly. He feels safe with you. Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression, a complex emotion she couldn't fully decipher. Isabel, he began, his voice lower than usual, these past weeks. The penthouse security system chimed, indicating the elevator was ascending to their floor, an unexpected visitor at nearly midnight. Lorenzo was on his feet instantly, all trace of softness gone from his expression. Stay here, he instructed, moving swiftly to the security panel. His posture relaxed slightly as he checked the camera. It's Antonio. Something must have happened. Antonio entered moments later, his usual composure fractured by what appeared to be genuine alarm. Boss, we have a situation. Marcus Johnson was picked up tonight trying to cross state lines. He's talking to the feds. About you. Lorenzo's expression hardened to granite. What exactly does he know? Enough to be dangerous. He claims you threatened him, that you're holding his girlfriend and unborn child against her will. He's spinning it as a rescue mission. That's ridiculous. Isabel struggled to her feet. I called Lorenzo. I chose to stay here. Antonio looked uncomfortable. He's claiming Stockholm Syndrome, saying you've been brainwashed. The feds are looking for any excuse to move on our operations, they might use this. When? Lorenzo asked, his mind clearly racing ahead to contingencies. Dawn raid, from what our source says. 6 hours, maybe less. Lorenzo turned to Isabel, his expression unreadable. Pack a bag. Essential items only. To Antonio, he added, secure Route 3. Call Dominic, tell him to prepare the lake house. And get Sophia up, quietly. Lorenzo, what's happening? Isabel asked, fear threading through her voice. A complication, nothing more. His tone was reassuring, but his eyes were hard. We need to move you to somewhere safer until this is resolved. I'm not running, she stated firmly. I haven't done anything wrong. Neither have you, at least, not regarding me. I'll talk to them, explain that I'm here by choice. Isabel. Lorenzo's voice softened as he took her hands in his. The truth doesn't always matter in these situations. These people aren't looking for the truth, they're looking for leverage against me. You and the baby would become pawns. Then what's the alternative? I spend the rest of my pregnancy hiding? My child is born a fugitive? That's no life, Lorenzo. A complex series of emotions crossed his face. Then, to her surprise, he turned to Antonio. Plan B, get Judge Harriman on the phone, his private line. And wake up Father Michael. Antonio's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. Boss, are you sure? Now, Antonio. Lorenzo's tone permitted no argument. As Antonio left to make the calls, Sophia appeared, already dressed. I heard. Plan B, Lorenzo? That's your solution? Do you have a better one, Aunt Sophia? One that keeps her and the baby safe? The older woman studied her nephew for a long moment, then unexpectedly smiled. No. For once, nephew, I think you've chosen correctly. To Isabel, she added, Come, Kara. We have much to do and little time. Will someone please explain what's happening? Isabel demanded, frustration overcoming her fear. Lorenzo took a deep breath. I'm offering you protection, legal protection that even the feds can't challenge. A status that would make it impossible for them to separate you from me, or to use you as leverage. Understanding dawned slowly. You're talking about marriage. A marriage of convenience, he clarified quickly. On paper only. Judge Harriman owes me a favor, he can perform the ceremony legally, even at this hour. Father Michael will provide the religious blessing, for my aunt's peace of mind. And this protects me how exactly? Isabel asked, struggling to follow the logic. Spousal privilege, Lorenzo explained. They can't force you to testify against me. And as my wife, any attempt to suggest you're being held against your will becomes much harder to prove. Your child would have my name, my protection, my resources, regardless of what happens to me. What would happen to you? Fear gripped her heart unexpectedly tight. Worst case? Federal charges, a trial. But it would be focused on business matters, not personal ones. He spoke with the calm of someone who had long ago accepted certain risks. Best case? Their raid finds nothing, Marcus's credibility is destroyed, and life continues. Either way, you and the baby remain safe and provided for. Isabel felt as if she'd stepped into some alternate reality. You're asking me to marry you. To save me from my ex-boyfriend's accusations. After knowing me for less than 2 months. I'm offering you a solution to an immediate problem. Nothing more. His voice was steady, but something in his eyes belied the clinical nature of his words. If and when this situation resolves, we can quietly annul the marriage if that's what you want. And if it's not what I want? The words escaped before she could consider them. Lorenzo went very still. What are you saying, Isabel? She hadn't known herself until the words were spoken, but now certainty filled her. I'm saying that these weeks here, with you, with Sophia, have been the first time in years I've felt truly safe. Respected. Valued. She placed a protective hand over her belly. I'm saying that my child deserves a father who will protect him, not abandon him. I'm saying that perhaps what began as convenience doesn't have to end that way. Lorenzo's carefully maintained control seemed to waver. You don't know what you're offering. The life I lead. I know exactly what I'm offering, she interrupted. And I know what I'd be getting in return. A man who honors his word. Who respects my choices? Who understands that protection without possession is the truest form of care? For a moment, he simply stared at her, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief and hope. Then, slowly, deliberately, he closed the distance between them and took her face in his hands with exquisite gentleness. "If we do this," he said softly, "it won't be just on paper for me. Do you understand?" "I understand." And she did, completely. His lips met hers in a kiss that held the weight of promise, of future, of choice freely made. When they parted, Sophia was smiling through tears, and Antonio was studiously examining the ceiling. "The judge will be here in 30 minutes, Antonio announced, clearing his throat. Father Michael shortly after. As dawn broke over the city, painting the penthouse in soft golden light, Isabel Moretti became Isabel Russo in a ceremony witnessed by Sophia, Antonio, and Lucia, who cried through the entire brief service. The federal raid, when it came 2 hours later, found a legally married couple sharing breakfast, all documentation in perfect order, and a very confused Marcus Johnson whose credibility crumbled under questioning. 1 month later, Sophia held her grandnephew by marriage, a healthy 8-pound boy with his mother's eyes and his chosen father's strong profile, and pronounced him a true Russo. "What will you name him?" she asked, reluctantly relinquishing the baby to Lorenzo's eager arms. Isabel and Lorenzo exchanged a look filled with understanding. "Marco," Isabel said softly. "For new beginnings." "Marco Vincenzo Russo," Lorenzo added, honoring both their fresh start and his own father's memory. As dawn broke over the city, painting the penthouse in soft golden light, Isabel finally understood that sometimes life's harshest storms lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes the most unexpected sanctuary becomes home. And sometimes, family forms in the spaces between broken pieces, creating something stronger than what came before. If you've enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Serafina's stories with others who might find inspiration in our narratives. Every story has a lesson, and every lesson can change a life. Thank you for listening.